Keanu Reeves had always found solace in the quiet streets of Los Angeles at night. The noise of fame, the flashing cameras, and the never-ending demands of Hollywood often felt overwhelming. But walking alone, blending into the city, gave him a sense of normalcy. Tonight was no different. The air was crisp, and the faint hum of distant traffic filled the streets. He had just left a meeting and decided to take a short walk before heading home. As he passed by a row of closed storefronts, something caught his attention. A figure sat hunched over on the sidewalk, wrapped in tattered blankets. The man's beard was long and unkempt, his clothes ragged and dirty. His hands, calloused and shaking slightly, clutched a small, crumpled paper cup with only a few coins inside. Keanu slowed his steps, feeling a strange sense of recognition. He wasn't sure why, but something about this man seemed familiar. He took a step closer. The streetlight above flickered, casting a dim glow over the man's face. That's when it hit him. His breath caught in his throat. It couldn't be Mr. Martinez, he whispered, his voice barely audible. The homeless man stirred at the sound of his name. Slowly, he lifted his head, his weary eyes struggling to focus. And then, a flicker of recognition. Keanu. The voice was hoarse, weak, but unmistakable. Keanu's heart pounded. This was his former acting teacher. The man who had once stood on the grand stages of the theater, guiding young actors with wisdom and passion. The man who had helped shape Keanu's career when he was just a struggling young actor. But now he was here, alone, homeless, forgotten. Keanu crouched down, searching his teacher's face for answers. What happened, Mr. Martinez gave a tired chuckle, his eyes holding years of pain. Life happened, my boy. Keanu clenched his fists. This wasn't right. Looking around at the indifferent city, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to just walk away. Keanu helped Mr. Martinez sit up against the cold brick wall. The man who had once commanded a stage now looked like a ghost of his former self. I thought you left the city, Keanu said softly, still trying to process what he was seeing. Mr. Martinez sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. I did. For a while. I had a good run, Keanu. His voice was raspy, but there was still a familiar warmth in it. Taught at some good schools. Worked with promising young actors. But things fell apart. Keanu listened intently, his chest tightening with each word. Martinez shook his head. The theater company I was with lost funding. They had to let me go. I figured I'd find something else, but teaching jobs weren't easy to come by. And then, well, my health took a turn. Keanu frowned. What happened? Martinez exhaled slowly, looking down at his trembling hands. Diabetes. Caught up with me. Couldn't afford the medication. Got too weak to work. And without work, the bills piled up. He let out a bitter chuckle. Lost my apartment. Then my car. Then everything. Keanu felt anger bubbling inside him, not at Mr. Martinez, but at the system that had failed him. How could a man who had dedicated his life to shaping young artists be left to suffer like this? Why didn't you reach out? Keanu asked, his voice filled with frustration and sadness. Martinez smiled faintly. To who, Keanu? My students. The ones trying to make a living themselves. You all had your own paths to walk. I didn't want to be a burden. Keanu clenched his jaw. This wasn't right. Where have you been staying? He asked. Martinez motioned toward a cluster of alleyways down the street. Shelters when I can. Out here when I can't. It's been a few years now. Keanu inhaled deeply. The thought of his old mentor, the man who had once told him to never give up, to always push forward, sleeping on the streets was unbearable. He knew then and there, he wasn't going to let this continue. Keanu met his teacher's tired eyes and said firmly, not anymore. Keanu sat beside Mr. Martinez, the cold pavement beneath them a stark contrast to the warmth of their conversation. But warmth wasn't enough. This man needed help, real help. Keanu took a deep breath. Listen, Mr. Martinez, you once told me that life is just a stage, and we all get our moments under the spotlight. Right now, your light has dimmed, but that doesn't mean the show is over. Mr. Martinez chuckled weakly, still as poetic as ever. Keanu. Keanu's gaze hardened with determination. Come with me. Tonight, you're not sleeping here. Martinez hesitated. Keanu, No arguments. Keanu shook his head. You took me under your wing when I was nobody. You taught me how to believe in myself. If I'm here today, it's because of people like you. Now, let me do the same for you. The old teacher's eyes glistened, but he remained silent. Pride was a hard thing to set aside. Keanu understood. He gently placed a hand on his mentor's shoulder. I know it's not easy. But let's start with something simple. Some food, a warm bed, and a fresh start. You don't have to do this alone. After a long pause, Martinez sighed. You always were stubborn, kid. Keanu grinned. And you always told me that persistence wins the day. Slowly, Martinez nodded. Keanu helped him to his feet, steadying him as they walked toward his car. It was a small moment, but in that moment, something shifted. For years, Martinez had believed he was forgotten. But tonight, he realized someone still cared. As they drove through the city, Keanu glanced at his teacher, who stared out the window, lost in thought. We'll get you back on your feet, he promised. Martinez smiled, a flicker of hope returning to his tired eyes. I'd like that, Keanu. I'd really like that. Keanu tightened his grip on the steering wheel. This wasn't just charity, this was a mission. Because in his heart, he knew, no man who had once given so much should ever feel like he had nothing left. Keanu sat across from Mr. Martinez at the dining table, watching as his former teacher savored a warm bowl of soup. For the first time in years, the old man wasn't eating out of survival, he was simply enjoying a meal. The warmth of the house, the soft hum of music playing in the background, and the sense of security, it was all foreign to Mr. Martinez now. I have to admit, Martinez said after a long sip of tea, I never thought I'd see a night like this again. Keanu leaned back in his chair, smiling. You deserve more than this, Mr. Martinez. You gave so much to people like me. It's time someone gave back. Martinez shook his head. That's kind of you to say, but I'm not sure I know who I am anymore. Everything I built, gone. The stage, the students, the passion, it all faded away. Keanu frowned. How many talented people had the world abandoned like this? That passion isn't gone, Keanu said firmly. It's just buried under everything life threw at you. But I see it, Mr. Martinez. I still see the man who once told me, the world belongs to those who dare to take the stage. Martinez chuckled, shaking his head. I said that, many times, Keanu grinned. And I believed you. The room fell into a thoughtful silence. Mr. Martinez tapped his fingers against his teacup, deep in thought. Could he still teach? Could he still inspire? I don't know if I have the strength anymore, Keanu, he admitted. Keanu leaned forward. Then let me help. There are young actors out there, struggling to find their voice. You can be that guiding light for them, just like you were for me. Martinez met Keanu's gaze, his eyes softer now. You really think they'd want to learn from an old man like me? Keanu smirked. I think they'd be lucky too. For the first time in years, Mr. Martinez felt something stir within him. A purpose, a reason to keep going. And for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to hope. A month had passed since that night. Mr. Martinez was no longer the frail, hopeless man Keanu had found on the streets. With regular meals, rest, and a renewed sense of purpose, he looked stronger, more alive. But it wasn't just his appearance that had changed, his spirit had awakened. Keanu had arranged for Martinez to teach acting workshops at a local theater, a small but prestigious space where aspiring actors gathered to learn. The first day, Martinez had been hesitant. What if I've lost my touch? He had asked Keanu. Keanu had simply smiled. Just be yourself. That's all they need. Now, standing in front of a group of eager young actors, Martinez found himself in his element again. His voice, once shaky with doubt, was now filled with the same passion Keanu remembered from years ago. Acting, Martinez told his students, isn't about pretending. It's about truth. If you can't find the truth in yourself, you'll never find it on stage. The students listened, captivated. And as Martinez spoke, he realized something. He hadn't lost his gift. It had simply been waiting for him to return. After class, Keanu met him outside the theater. You were incredible, he said. Martinez smiled, shaking his head in disbelief. I forgot how much I loved this. Keanu placed a hand on his shoulder. You never lost it, Mr. Martinez. You just needed someone to remind you. Martinez looked at him, eyes filled with gratitude. Keanu, I can never repay you for what you've done. Keanu chuckled. You already have. Everything I've accomplished, everything I am. I wouldn't be here without you. The two men stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their journey sinking in. Then, Martinez took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. I think, he said, for the first time in a long while, I'm excited about tomorrow. Keanu smiled. This was the real happy ending, not in wealth or fame, but in restoring the soul of a man who had once given so much to others. And as they walked away from the theater, Mr. Martinez no longer felt like a forgotten man. He felt like a teacher again.